So I ended up reading my most anticipated book of the year in November, and I thought for sure it was going to be my favorite book of the year and my favorite of the month, but it didn't turn out to be that way. And that was this one, A Curse for True Love. And my favorite book of November actually ended up being a book that has been sitting on my bookshelf for almost a year. But we'll get more into that later. So let's backtrack a little. So in November, I read 4 books. And November was the month of reading sequels for me because all the books I read were continuations of series. Like my September and October wrap up, I want to talk about them in order of enjoyment from least favorite to favorite. And now all the books I read in November were all 4-star reads, so even the one at the bottom of the list I still enjoyed very much. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. So this is a 3rd book in the Finlay Donovan series, and it's a mystery series, and it is about single mom Finlay, who is a struggling writer of mystery novels. And one day she is having a book meeting at Panera, and a lady overhears her. This lady mistakenly thinks that Finlay is actually a hit woman, and so she tries to hire her to get rid of her husband. And Finlay, of course, tries to correct the lady, but she somehow ends up getting involved in the whole situation anyways, and like hijinks ensue from there. The first 2 books in the series are favorites of mine and 5-star reads, and I don't really read that many mystery books, so really loving this series took me by surprise. So this 3rd one, I enjoyed the continuation of the series, although I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the first 2, but it still really made me laugh. And I was reading this at work one day and in the break room, and I just like burst out laughing, and I'm glad no one was around because they probably would have thought I was crazy. But I just love this series because it makes me laugh. And this one, like the other 2, was really fast and quick to read. And I flew through this, and I really liked the climax, the action scene at the end. I thought that was really exciting. And now I can't wait to read the 3rd, and I have questions from this one that I need answered in the next book. And the 3rd book is coming out next year on March 5th, so I will definitely be reading that one. The next book I want to talk about is Foxglove by Adalyn Grace. So this was the 2nd book to the Belladonna series, and the first book, Belladonna, came out last year, and when it came out, it was really popular, and it was a book that everyone was talking about and reading, and I really enjoyed that first one. And in this one, we get the continuation of Signa's story, a girl who can see ghosts and is in a relationship with Death himself. And the first one was very much a murder mystery in which Signa goes to live with relatives because ever since she was a baby, she's been passed around from relative to relative, and they all keep dying in strange ways ever since her parents died when she was only a baby. She goes to live with these relatives, and their mother had just passed away, and Signa sees the mother's ghost, so then she's trying to uncover the truth of the mother's death. Her cousin Blythe has the same sickness and symptoms that her mother had, so it was up to Signa to try to figure out what was going on with Blythe and what really happened to their mother. So in the second one, again, we have a murder mystery kind of going on, which I feel like for me, that was the aspect of this book that I was least interested in, because I feel like we already had that in the first book, so it felt a little repetitive. And so this was actually the first book that I picked up in November. And I ended up only reading 100 and something pages, and then I had to put it down, and I didn't pick it back up again until the end of the month, so it's also the last book I read in November. And I had to put this down, first of all, because Curse for True Love came out, and I wanted to read that. And also because it wasn't really, like, pulling me in at the beginning. And the reason I think I struggled getting into this one was because the first book was told only from Signa's point of view. But in the second one, you also get chapters from Blythe's perspective as well. And at the beginning, I wasn't really interested in reading Blythe's perspective. And I was more interested in reading about Signa and her relationship with Death, because one of my favorite parts of this book is the romance between her and Death. So what would happen was I would be reading a Signa chapter, really enjoying it, and then the next chapter would switch to Blythe's point of view. Then that would just pull me out of the story and kind of stop my reading momentum. So I put this down, but then I ended up going back to it because I really want to continue it because I wanted to enjoy this book. This book is divided into 3 parts. So once I got to the second part, that's when my enjoyment started, because we have a change of setting, which I think we really needed. And also, finally, you get more of the plot going, and you get to see how Blythe is more connected to the plot in the second part. So I feel like during that second part, I've finally started to enjoy the story and reading from Blythe's perspective. Then we got to the third part, and I absolutely love the third part of this book. I wish the whole book was like that. And there was a plot twist in this that I thought was really well done. And by the end of this book, you see why we started getting Blythe's perspective in this book. And now I think it was really well done how Blythe's perspective was added, even though it made me struggle in the beginning of the book. And I just have to say, like, my favorite parts were still, like, the romance between Death and Cigna, and I just thought the romance was the cutest thing ever. And I loved how this ended. But if you read Belladonna and you haven't read Foxglove yet, and you really enjoyed and loved the relationship between Cigna and Death, then you won't be disappointed by the ending of this. Alright, and now we're going to talk about A Curse for True Love. So first, I just want to start off by saying, I really enjoyed this book, and I thought it was a very good conclusion to an amazing series. And there was one thing that I wanted to happen in this book, or I would have been very upset. And that one thing did happen, so I am very happy about that. However, I didn't love this book as much as I thought I was going to, and that makes me really sad saying that. But I don't know if it's because I hyped it up too much in my brain ever since I finished reading the second one last year. And I've been waiting so long that maybe just like I had completely unrealistic expectations. But that being said, I did find the first like almost 100 pages underwhelming. And I think the reason in that lies that there is no Jax in this book until page 93. But what we do get is a lot of chapters from Apollo's POV. This is the first book where we get his perspective. And when I had learned about that before this book came out, I was a little nervous about that because I was like, ooh, I don't know how I'm going to like that. And at first I was okay with it. But then I really started not to like Apollo's perspective. I don't like him as a character, and I don't really want to read from his perspective. But at the same time, I see the reason why his perspective is in the book. Like, it makes sense why it's there. But I just don't like it. I will say, though, that he went through a crazy character arc in this book. Like, I never saw that coming, what happens at the end. But then once Jax does show up, I started to enjoy this a lot more. Because we finally get Jax and Evangeline interacting again. And their interactions and banter is my favorite part of these books. And then I love the second half of this book. The second half of this book was awesome, and this book was a little chaotic, like things move around, like things do move like really fast and so many things are happening. But in the second half, that just kept me flipping the pages. And my absolute favorite part of this book was the Phoenix tree scene. If you know, you know. I love that part. That like made this book for me. It was everything I wanted. And I also love that this book had a throwback scene to my favorite scene and part in the second book, The Ballad of Never After. I love that that was there. That made me feel all the things I felt when reading it in The Ballad of Never After again. Overall, I really enjoyed this. The first two books I gave 5 stars, and I'm torn on this, whether it's 5 or 4.5, just because of those first 90-something pages. But I feel like for now, I'm going to go with 4.5, and then maybe when I do a reread, I'll feel differently and I'll raise it to the full 5 stars. But I just feel conflicted right now, so I'm going to leave it at that. But overall, this is still one of my favorite series of all time. And I have to say that the second book, The Ballad of Never After, is my favorite book in the series. And also, I've heard some rumors that we could possibly be getting another story set in this world. And I hope that does happen because there are 2 characters in this book whose stories still have to be told and still have loose ends. Like, they're in here a little bit, but what you see of them in here just gives you more questions and also more possibilities, and I just need to see that happen. So yeah, those were my complicated thoughts on A Curse for True Love. So now it's time to talk about my favorite book of the month, the book that just sat on my bookshelf for almost a year until I picked it up in November. And that is Seasparrow by Kristin Cashore. So this book is part of the Graceling Realm series. This is the 5th book in the series, and it is one of my favorite series of all time. So I probably shouldn't be surprised that this was my favorite book of the month because I love this series. And along with Once Upon a Broken Heart is one of my favorite YA series. So the series starts with Graceling, and then it's Graceling, Fire, Bitter Blue, Winterkeep, and then this book. And each book, they all take place in the same world, but they follow different characters. So the first 2 are Graceling and then Fire. And this one came first, but I think you could read Fire without having read Graceling. It would work just fine. Then after those 2, you get Bitter Blue. And Bitter Blue follows a character that was introduced in Graceling. And out of the series, I'd say that this is the only one that isn't 5 stars for me. This one was a 4-star read. So this has been like the weakest link of the series. But that being said, the groundwork that is laid in this series, I think, is the reason why the next book in the series is amazing. So book number 4 is Winterkeep. And Winterkeep actually has Bitter Blue, the main character of the 3rd book, in this book as one of the main characters. There's multiple main characters in this one and multiple perspectives. And I think all the work that the first 3 books did is what made reading this one so rewarding. And so I love this one so much, and it has one of my favorite couples in here. In this Graceling Realm series, there are people who are born with graces, and these are powers, kind of like quirks if you watched My Hero Academia. Graces could be anything really ordinary, from your grace making you a really great cook to it being something more extraordinary with it giving you the ability to read minds. And so this story follows Hava, who was introduced in Bitter Blue. And Hava has the grace of disguise. And so in this book is all about her, and it's about her trying to figure out exactly what she wants out of life and coming to terms with how her tough childhood has shaped the way she acts and how maybe she wants to change that and overcome that. And what's very interesting about Seasparrow is that it's the first book in the Graceling series that is told from first-person perspective. All the other books are told from third person. And I think that works very well in this one because our main focus is Hava, and the first-person perspective really helps us get into her head. And that being said, this book is very much character-driven, takes its time introducing us to Hava and really getting into her head. And as such, the first big thing in the plot doesn't really happen to 100-ish pages in. So just know that if you want to read this, that it's very slow in the beginning, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. And this book does get dark at times because it kind of turns into a survival story. But I feel like the dark times make the times of triumph and happiness like shine even more in this book. Also, I have to say that there are blue fox kits in this book, blue fox babies, and they're the most adorable thing ever. And they're also part of the happiness of this book because these blue fox babies and just like taking care of them gives our characters light in the middle of very dark times. And since this is the 5th book in the series I've read, the series very much feels like coming home and reuniting with old friends. And I love all the characters in the series, and I get so excited when I get to see older characters from other books. And it's just like it has so many like quiet and heartwarming moments between those characters. And there is a little bit of romance in here between Hava and someone else. But the story is very much not about that, because it's very much just about Hava trying to figure out herself and her life and what she wants. But the way the romance is done in here is very well done and very like realistic and healthy. That's the thing I have to say about this series. I feel like all the relationships in here feel very real and very healthy, and it's something that I could root for in real life. Whereas other series like A Curse for True Love, I love Jax, but he's a morally gray character, and in real life he would be a red walking flag, so there's that. Yeah, I just really love this book, and I really love this series as a whole. And if you haven't read the Graceling series yet, And if you really like quiet fantasy books where the characters have some sort of supernatural ability or power, then I would say definitely check these books out. So those are all the books I read in November. If you have read any of these, let me know down below without spoilers what you thought about them. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!